Previously on Mr. Hippo Criticizes.
I'm here to tell you, well, more accurately warn you about One Night at the Old Location. This game is easily the second worst fan game I've ever played in my entire life. How bad could it possibly be? You turn your attention to the bottom of the screen. You see that? Onatol 2. Let's finish this. Hello again. It's me, Mr. Hippo. I'm back again. I've returned to finish some unfinished business. As I alluded to in the last video, my job here isn't quite done after all. As it turns out, the developer just couldn't leave well enough alone with his catastrophe of a game and decided that he wanted to make a sequel, as was teased in the final screen of the game once you beat it. As you can see, there's Onatol 2 written in red text. I zoomed in on it in the video. You can see it. Anyways, if you were extra observant, you might have gone to the game page itself and tried to track down this game and see what it was about, and didn't want to have to wait for me to come back and make a video on it. Oh, by the way, I just asked Denver to appear on the channel this time. Don't worry, you didn't click on the wrong video. Another video wasn't canceled. This is actually just my project that I'm putting on this channel. Anyways, you might have gone to the game page and tried to find it, only to realize that it actually wasn't there. Now, you might at first be relieved. Oh, thank goodness you didn't actually go through with that, man. Could you imagine how miserable it would be playing a sequel to that game? But in such an assumption, unfortunately, you'd be incorrect. As it turns out, the reason the game doesn't exist anymore is out of shame. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. This developer, the developer that made One Night at the Old Location, the developer that continues to keep One Night at the Old Location on GameJolt to this day, took that game down out of shame. Now, what does that say about the quality of this game compared to the already miserable quality of the first one? Well, I was determined to find out. You see, I have some close contact, you might say, with some of the members of the Onatol team. So I reached out to them and asked them, hey, could I perhaps get a copy of that game? Do any of you know anything about it? And it didn't take long for me to get this. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to introduce you to the world of Onatol 2. Allow my voice to whisk you away into this world once again. And much like before, this video will be very lightly edited. It's just some small visual cues here and there. If you'd like to, you can tab out, do whatever you want, maybe complete some repetitive tasks, go wash your dishes, something or other. And my voice will whisk you away into the world of Onatol 2. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, already you can see several inconsistencies with this title screen that I just can't help myself but stop here and list a few of them off. I know previously I didn't linger much on the title, but this one just looks so god-awful that I can't help myself. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that unlike the first game, and pretty much every Five Nights at Freddy's fan game to exist, the buttons and the title are centered. Now, why this was done, I have no idea. It's not like it's utilized in any, creative way to put some design on there. The only thing it does is it makes the title barely fit on the screen with the awful font and text size. That's not the point right now. Anyways, everything's centered on the screen, which is automatically very strange, but another thing is that the play button doesn't say play, it says continue. So, I'm not quite sure why it says this, considering I don't think this is supposed to be like, it's the same night, like, One Night at Flumpty's style, where it's just the same night being repeated over and over again. In actuality, we're in a completely different location, so it'd have to be some supernatural forces going on to make this the same one night. But hey, I'm not the developer. He's got clearly a lot going on in his head, so I'll give that a pass. And another thing is the background. You get to see quite a lot of it with the scented text, and the fact that it has, like, the font has, like, small slits in it for some reason. I'm not quite sure why he chose this one of all of them. The previous one looked way better. And, that's not to say that it looked good, but it at least looked like a Five Nights at Freddy's game. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off topic. The background is just seemingly the office from Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Now, you might say, oh, well, clearly it's meant to represent the office from the first one night at the old location, right? Well, if that's your argument, I'll ask you, where's my green floating translucent orb then? Not seeing it. And this is very clearly just an image of the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 office. He couldn't even bother to make it consistent with the previous game. And honestly, not even consistent with the original Five Nights at Freddy's. It kind of looks like it's a fan-made render at this point because, as you can see, the proportions of the door and light buttons don't exactly match up with those found in the original game, So, you might think, okay, well, this is just an incredibly boring, simple title screen, but, I guess it gets the job done. It's not that big of a deal, but no. Don't worry, there's one more detail about it. Do you see it? Oh, no? Okay. Let me get closer for you. This is Dyer. Why is this here? Can any of you explain to me exactly the reason for this being here? Now, if you can't see, maybe your eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and I can understand that, but it's very clearly some sort of fan-made fixed mangle or render that's plastered in the darkness. And, it's more like a PNG because it's just floating there. You can see there, it starts at about their shoulders, I believe, and moves upwards. It's just sitting there. It's floating in the middle of the doorway. It has absolutely no implications in the game or the previous one, as Mangle herself, let alone this fixed version, doesn't even appear. Why would you put this in here? I'm starting to think that it might be stolen, or maybe he made it himself, but, either way, it looks like complete garbage. Let's be honest. You can barely even see it anyways, I can almost guarantee you that you didn't even see it when I was just talking about The Office, and I myself didn't see it until several minutes of looking at this title screen, reflecting on what exactly makes it so garbage. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to say and make sure I hit every single point. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's actually the title screen, and I'm completely unsure why he chose to slap this mangle thing. You can't tell me that's Funtime Foxy. It definitely isn't. That very clearly looks like a fixed mangle. I bet it was, it kind of looks like the Return to Freddy's, honestly. I don't think it is, but it looks about the same level of quality. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, enough on the title screen. We'll talk more about that once we get into the later nights. Oh yeah, ignore those stars in the bottom left corner. They don't mean anything to you right now. But just note that I have them all unlocked, okay? I have all 3 stars there. It'll be important later. Anyways, let's actually get into the game and see, has anything improved? Does it look any better than the garbage we saw last time? Is there any green floating translucent orbs? Well, let's find out. Okay, Jesus Christ. So immediately, looking at this, you can notice several discrepancies, oddly similar to that of the first game's office, yet magnified to somehow be even worse. For example, well, I'm sure you've already noticed him, but yes, he's back. If you zoom over here, you'll see this Foxy plush, and it's the exact same one as from the first game, which has returned again to still look like complete garbage, which is especially funny in this case, but I'll get to that in a moment. The lighting is, once again, completely wrong. In fact, I'd argue it's even more wrong, because the shadow is literally coming from the exact point the light is. Now, as you can see, the light is right here, which is very clearly casting a light into the the right corner of the room where the Foxy plush is, and yet it's got an entire black shrouded shadow on its chest, which, well, makes absolutely no sense. But the funniest part about this whole ordeal is that this Foxy plush is literally designed to fit in this office. This is the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 office, as if you haven't gathered that, and the Foxy plush that this is literally comes from a custom night challenge in that exact game. All I needed to do was put a Foxy plush right on this table, right in the middle, right here, and you would have had a properly lit, actually fitting prop. But no, instead, Photoshop it into the back corner where it looks like complete trash. That sounds about right to me. And what makes it even funnier, if you turn your attention over to the desk, you'll find that there is a plush on there. But, the plush that's designed for this area in particular, no. We put that on the back speaker. Instead, it's this Bonnie plush, which, hell, I have no idea where it's from. It just looks like garbage. I can't even imagine a light setting that this would work in. So I couldn't tell you what game it's from, to be fully honest. It looks like somebody just cranked the brightness up on the PNG. It's the opposite problem of the Foxy plush. In fact, it doesn't even look natural in any lighting. I just don't... Why would you choose to use this here, Sorry, I'm already managing to lose my temper. And don't worry, it doesn't get any better from here. If you look over to your right side, you'll see that the FNAF 3 box is here. The one with all the spare parts and miscellaneous garbage with all the toy animatronics that's located in the left side of the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 office. And, I think this is easily the worst example of improper lighting you can find, considering it's literally green. It's lit with a green light, similar to that of, obviously, FNAF 3's setting, and yet placed in a perfectly normal lit, white-walled office. Why? Why would you put this here, There's no way it has any lore implication, considering, in fact, it actually kind of ruins the lore, because, as you'll see, one of these animatronics is literally in the game, but that's neither here nor there. On the left side, you'll see a Freddy mask, taken from Help Wanted, which, first of all, looks incredibly awkward, considering that it's taken from Help Wanted, a 3D rendered game which was designed for VR, but now has a non-VR mode that honestly feels like a fan game. I ought to make a video on that. It's not the current topic. Anyways, it's taken from a 3D game in a 2D environment, which makes it look pretty awkward. And also, if you haven't noticed, on the left side, it has its right ear chopped off, just slit clean down. Could it have been that hard to find a PNG, get a screenshot or chop it out right to where it actually covers the entire ear? It couldn't have possibly been that much of an extra hurdle, but this developer never ceases to amaze me, if you couldn't see. So, anyways, this right here, this is the shock button from the first game, right behind the Foxy plush, which is also from the first game, which actually, I'll give it to him, it's actually not that badly photoshopped in. But why? For what reason is it there? Now you might say, it's a cool aesthetic, it references the first game, but we'll get to that in a minute, okay? The point is that this is incredibly redundant for several reasons, okay? There's also this pizza on the wall that's taken from FNAF World. For some reason, once again, completely different art style, doesn't fit the environment at all. Look, I think you get the idea. Now, turning our attention to the HUD itself, you might have noticed that the time in the top right corner is the same way it was in the original One Night at the Old location. Just a number. It doesn't actually say AM, even though it clearly, still here, I'll show the screenshot, still is referring to AM, so it's not referring to something else, it's referring to AM, but he just couldn't be bothered to use AM, didn't fix that problem. But for the power, he managed to make it even more confusing by making the number 200 instead of 1. Now, if you could name me one good reason why this was done, then I'll give you $100. But, I'm very poor right now, so I don't actually have $100. Not that it would matter, considering there's literally no good reason for this. It doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. It's just a strange aesthetic change, similar to that of Five Nights at Wario's, which does the same thing, except that game at least has a battery symbol to show that it's referring to the power level. In this game, it's just a number, as it was in the previous one, except now it's 200 instead of 100, so it's even harder to figure out that it's your power at first. Even when I booted it up, I was confused, and I'd played the original game, because all of a sudden it was 200 power, which, by the way, means literally nothing. As I've said, it means quite literally nothing. It would be much more convenient and readable to just make it say 100 like before, but of course not. It just had to make it 200 to make it even more confusing. Because, typically power levels go from 0 to 100%, and so having it be 200 and not have a percent sign, or, a power usage bar, which would have been incredibly easy to add. No, it's just got to be the number and be incredibly confusing. But perhaps one of the worst offenders of them all is the fact that the camera doesn't move. You're completely stationary, the entire time. You can't look from left to right like you could in the original Onatol. It's just a squashed-down image of the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 office. You couldn't even give me the courtesy of being able to look left and right. And this, combined with the incredible sound design of this area, you can take a listen. Hear that? That slight buzzing of the fan there, that is quite literally the only sound effect that you hear in the entire night. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I can't hold this against the game itself. This is just a small side note, but have you ever noticed that the fan is slightly off-angled? It looks like at the angle it's at, the air will be blowing slightly to your left side, You couldn't even align it so it goes to the center. Once again, this is not a problem with the game, but just something I noticed while I was recording this video. Anyways, that sound that you just heard, the spinning of the fan there, is all the sound you get. Now, if you remember, in the original Onatol, there was a very distinct sound effect for every single animatronic that spawned in your office. And those quickly overlapped and got overwhelming, so the developer must have heard those cries and solved it by just making it extremely mundane, and the only ambience you get is the buzzing of this fan. No animatronics have a sound effect that, except two of them, but we'll get to that. No animatronics have a sound effect. It's just complete silence the entire time, and you can't even look around. It just makes you get bored within the first 30 seconds of playing this game, Speaking of playing this game, let's get into that, shall we? I'll let the gameplay start now, but I'll just talk over it. I'm not gonna, let you see some of it like you did before, because, well, at this point, you've definitely already seen both the mechanics and everything you have to do in this night several times over. Yeah, that's right. I'm sure you've seen it. Literally, all you have to do is, for Foxy, you press this here power button, which drains one of your power in the bottom left corner and gets rid of Foxy. Now, there's several things wrong with this, okay? First of all, this power button right here is much like the green floating translucent orb. Hey, we found something similar. That's what I was waiting for. That's what it's all about, I suppose. Anyways, it's like the green floating translucent orb, in that it's literally impossible for it to exist in this form right here. And in fact, it's even more impossible because, as you see here, when you run out of power, it literally just disappears. It just vanishes out of thin air. It doesn't just not do anything anymore, like the flashlight, which I'll get into. It just vanishes. So it's apparently just a figment of electricity or something, like a hologram, perhaps. I'm not quite sure, but what I am sure of is that it looks like garbage. It's just a stock image of some power button that just floats there on the desk in a geometrically impossible way, But not only that, if you look over to Foxy, you'll see that this render, if you haven't noticed already, is done by the developer himself. Now, in my previous video, you might have remembered me saying that later in this game's lifespan, you might understand why it might have been for the best that he didn't use any of his own renders in that game. This is why, because it looks like trash. Now you might say, oh, it's not that bad. Yeah, well, look at this. He's on, he's off. He's on, he's off. He's on, he's off. You see that? You see how his elevation just changes, goes up and down? You can't even make the height of him consistent. Now that is lazy if I've ever seen it. And also, if you look below, you can very clearly see his foot appear and disappear as his elevation changes. And actually led me to believe this was some sort of camcorder secret hidden camera under the desk that only appeared when Foxy was there, because I had no idea that that was actually just his fat foot. And also, it drains 1 power from your 200 supply. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, based on the sound this thing makes, which is a small click, which is exactly the same as the translucent, it all connects. Anyways, sorry. It makes a small clicking sound, so, I imagine it's not initiating some controlled shock or something. So you'd think that it obviously is turning off Foxy. That's what it does. It's a power button for Foxy, and it disables him, right? That makes the most sense. So why does it drain your power? You'd think it'd actually reduce your power usage because Foxy is on. In fact, it would have been a pretty cool mechanic to have it be like, maybe when Foxy's on, he drains your power, sort of like Balloon Boy from the first game, and the only way to stop him is to hit the power button quickly. That would have actually made sense and been a much better mechanic, but instead, when he comes, you just click one button, and he's gone. Simple as that. It plays like garbage, and it looks like garbage. I like to call that the Onatol mix, if you know what I'm saying. The other animatronic is Freddy, and Freddy appears in the right vent with, oh my god. Jesus Christ, are you seeing that? Yeah, that's also the developer's render right there. Tell me, when you see that, do you think that he's crawling through that vent? Is the first thing you think of, oh, he's coming to get me, he's crawling in? He doesn't even have any pupils. I can't even see his arms. He's so wrongly posed. There's nothing redeemable about this. It's frankly quite the depressing sight looking at this thing. And by the way, it doesn't even have any build-up, animation or fade-in or anything whatsoever. He just appears, snap of the fingers, at your right vent, and just materializes into existence. So, A for effort, I guess. To get rid of him, you have to use the flashlight by clicking on the vent. Now, I've never known a Freddy to be affected by lights of all things, and it makes no sense considering when you use it, he just disappears, which somehow manages to look even worse and be even more nonsensical than Nightmare Fredbear from the first game, which is an impressive achievement. I'll give him that. Now, the flashlight drains power very quickly while you have it on. So, of course, you'd think, okay, well, I better turn it off. Better click on it again. Yeah.
Can I turn off the light? Can I turn that off? Can I turn that off? Can I turn that off? Hey, can I turn that off? Hey, can I turn that off? Turn it off!
Okay, calm down there. The flashlight is extremely broken. As you can see, Denver was frantically clicking on it, trying to turn it off with all his might, and nothing was happening. That's because in order to turn off the flashlight, you have to double-click. And, well, just double-click it, right? No, because if you move your mouse at any point during the double-click, it cancels the previous click, which is why you couldn't turn it off there. You have to keep your mouse perfectly still and click twice for it to turn off, which is incredibly finicky to say the least. Now, you can get a pretty good rhythm going by clicking it to turn it on, and then clicking again to turn it off without moving your mouse, because the click that turns the flashlight on also counts as the first click to turn it off. So all you need to do is click it, don't move your mouse, and then click it again, and it counts as double-clicking it, which is, I'm sure, not intended, but hey, it's Massydevs after all. But for the first-time experience, as you saw with good old Denver there, it's quite confusing and frankly, BS. But anyway, so you do that. So you got Foxy, which you have to click on. You got Freddy, which you have to shine the flashlight on. So what's next? Well, I'm glad you asked. Nothing. That's it, Matt. I've explained every single mechanic. Now, I know my complaint on the previous game was, it throws everything at you at once. That doesn't mean that you should make it as boring as humanly possible. There's absolutely nothing happening this whole night. It's complete silence, and all you do is click 2 buttons over and over again. That's it. You don't have to press anything, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to move your mouse between... All you need is those 2 points. That's it. And also, now would be a great time to reflect on the AI of the animatronics. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no game developer, I just take certain interest in some FNAF fan games, but... From what I've gathered, it seems to work like every 5 seconds or so, a roll is conducted in the game's code on all the animatronics that can appear. This roll is like a 50-50 or something, seemed about that way, and all the animatronics are rolled at the same time. Now, if the roll succeeds, they appear. If the roll doesn't succeed, it waits for the next 5-second interval. It doesn't seem like they appear at random times at all. It seems like it's in specific intervals. You can see here, when they appear, they almost always appear at the same time, and if only one of them appears, then it waits for the next 5-second interval to show up. So it's not like one of them's going to appear and then the next one's going to appear, like 2 seconds after. It's always in a specific interval. So there's not even any real AI in the game. It just coin flips all the animatronics every 5 seconds. Now that makes it even more boring and even more lazy because most of the time you'll end up getting both the animatronics spawning at the same time, which means you just click it, turn on the flashlight, turn it off, and you click it, turn on the flashlight, turn it off, and you click it, turn on the flashlight, turn it off. You understand, okay? Now, if you thought the first game was monotonous, you clearly haven't seen anything yet, because that's the entire night. That's it. That's the end. I have nothing more to say. That's all it is. For one night at the old location, if this game actually had one night, God, it'd be the worst game to ever exist. Well, I guess I'm not saying that it already isn't the worst game to ever exist, but that's neither here nor there, okay? The point is, that's the entire first night. That's it. So, have fun clicking 2 buttons over and over again. I've got nothing else to say about it. So, just gonna fast forward here. Okay, There it is. Okay, so here's the end of the night, and you get this 6 a.m. screen. Now let me unmute the game audio for you so you can hear this. It's brilliant, right? Real celebratory sound, the ding-dong, ding-dong, with the applause and everything. No, it's completely silent. You go from the mild buzzing of the fan to it just being completely silent. You don't get anything for that. It's just completely gone. Now, of course, if you know anything about One Night at the Old Location, you'll know that this is not the end. I'm not going to put up an act and act like it is. You're just sent back to this dreadful title screen, and you see, and now you have a star. But, wait a minute, didn't I just have 3 stars on the title screen? He couldn't even code in a failsafe for if you were to complete an earlier night while having already completed the rest of the game, as by completing the first night it just sets the variable for stars to 1, instead of, maybe check in to see if you already have that star. It's laughable, really, I'll tell you it is. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is, it's the same thing. You click the star, and this happens. The title screen returns to a more average FNAF style where everything's on the left, including the buttons, and as an image on the right, you get an image of Freddy, who is glitching the hell out, but it's just a stolen image from FNAF 1. And then the font changes, which is now different between the title and the continue button. As you can see, it says top left there, One Night at the Old Location 2 in this kind of silver, techno-looking font. I don't really know how to describe it. But then there's this continue, which is just in the most generic, low-resolution font you can think of. And if you zoom into it, you can see that it actually has a very faint, kind of blue square outline. It's kind of like transparent, but it seems that just came with the asset, and he just couldn't be bothered to patch it out for some reason. Probably the worst offender is this wonderful OST, I think so anyways, I can't imagine it being a different song, that plays once you hit the star. Now, I don't know who composed this, and if they've improved over the years. This game is quite old, but holy moly, this sucks ass. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, let's just click the continue button and get into it. Wait, actually, I gotta point something out here. Notice how this time there's a short loading screen and a tip screen, which, shows what you're supposed to do, whereas in the first night it just doesn't exist. That's a very strange inconsistency, but then again, the mechanics was so brain-dead simple that I can't really blame them. But anyways, upon actually loading into this night, you, once again, immediately regret ever playing this game in the first place. As guess what? Our good old friend Turn Down the Brightness has returned. Just like in the first game's second night, everything is just dimmed. For absolutely no reason other than to make it annoying to even look at your screen. Night light's still on full blast, everything's still the exact same, except now he just turned down the brightness. I don't know why, I don't want to know why, I'm going to be honest with you, because it looks like complete garbage, just as it did. And even more so now, because everything else in this game manages to look even more like garbage, plus the dimming effect. Anyways, I'm sorry about that. I'm losing my temper once again. This night comes with a few changes since last time, not counting the strange dimming of the lights. For one, as if you go over to the left side here and click this button now works. Oh, wait, I'd forgotten to mention that, haven't I? Oh, yeah, so you probably saw it in the footage earlier, but there's a button on the left, right, and middle that if you get close, it appears. And these have been here the whole time, and still remain here, except in night one it just didn't do anything. Well, except the mask, that one does do something, but it actually had no purpose in that night, considering the only animatronic that needs the mask is in this night, and not the previous one, you know? But the other two buttons were completely useless. Despite being there, they just gave a little toot-toot sound when you tried to click them. So I don't know why they have been there the whole time. You can very clearly just make them not appear until the next night, like you did with the camera panel in night 2 of One Night at the Old Location. But you know what? You do you. If you want to make it ugly for the sake of it being ugly, then by all means. But anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is it works now. And when you flip it up, you get the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 music box camera, which serves no actual purpose other than having the wind-up music box button, which instead of being a meter, because it seems like the music box is actually already unwound and you're winding it back, I don't know. Anyways, it has no meter, it's just a button that makes the puppet go away, but I'm getting ahead of myself. You might have also noticed that the image of the camera itself and the button appears before the camera animation is even fully finished, which means that it just floats there in midair for the first few frames because the camera didn't even have time to catch up to it. It really is not that hard for it to wait to finish the animation before it spawns in the camera, you know? Now, in order to put down this camera, you need to right-click on the left side, which is completely not explained, but it also raises the question, if you can have it so left-click and puts it up, and right-click and puts it down, then why didn't you do that for the flashlight? It would make it so much easier than having to double-click it and keep your mouse perfectly still, you know? If you can do that anyways, why didn't you? It just doesn't make any sense to me, you know? Anyways, getting back on track, the new animatronics, right, so there's the puppet, which I'll begin with because, I was just talking about him, and, well, Massey developer, everyone. Here he is. There's so much wrong with that. Okay, he's literally standing in just a default pose. He just appears out of nowhere, no fade in whatsoever, just like everything. His textures are just completely messed up, entirely, and the worst part is his mechanic doesn't even make any sense. In order to get rid of him, you have to open your camera panel and click the wind up music box button, which will make a small winding sound and make him go away. Which is completely illogical, because if you know how the puppet works in FNAF 2, he's only kept at bay if you keep the music box wound up the whole time. If it runs out, and then you try to wind it back up, it doesn't bring him back. So him just disappearing upon you clicking the button, despite the fact that he's already out of his box, makes no logical sense. But, that's not even the worst offender, because, well, why would that matter when his mechanic is just dysfunctional to begin with? He doesn't work. That's what I'm trying to say. He literally is dysfunctional. Entirely. He cannot kill you. Now, this is similar to Shadow Freddy from the original game. However, Shadow Freddy could actually kill you, as explained by a developer. That was in the comment section of the previous video, but he explained that it was due to your mouse being on the object that actually moves when he disappears, and which is obviously not how it's supposed to work, but at least he could technically kill you. No, the puppet just doesn't do anything. He can stand there the entire night, and you don't even have to deal with him. Which manages to make it even more boring because you don't even have to deal with one of the animatronics at all. Which, thank God, because I didn't want to have to deal with any more of these mechanics anyways, but at least it was 2 clicks in this one instead of just 1 to get rid of him. So, at the same time, it would have at least made it more interesting. I forget it. The point is that it's just another example of the developer's incompetence. The camera appears before the actual monitor goes up, the render is terrible, his textures are messed up, and the mechanic doesn't even work. What does work, though? Toy Bonnie. And his render is just a Scott render. It's the exact same thing as in the FNAF 2 office, except instead of having a cool, animation of him sliding in and making it look cool, he just instantly pops into existence and stands there and looks at you. And the way you get rid of him is you put on the mask, except you don't actually, because the moment you hit the button to put it on, he disappears before the mask is even on your head, which is a really great job you did there. He just vanishes into, nothingness apparently the moment you click it, and then you right-click it to take it off, and simple as that. That's it. That's all there is to be said about it. He does properly kill you, but it should be noted that this is the first render that isn't made by him, so he couldn't even fully commit to just actually doing the work himself. He just got bored, I guess, and decided to copy Toy Bonnie. Anyways, as I was saying, that's the entire mechanic, and he just goes away like that. Now, if you looked at the tip screen, you saw that those are the only 2. So, I guess that's it then. Just this exact same night, except with 2 more, except, of course not. He had to forget one. Just like in night 3 of One Out of the Old Location Original, he just completely left out Chica, who now appears at the left vent, and you have to shine the flashlight on him, and it's just Freddy. Just Freddy. That's all it is. There's nothing to be said about it. It's the exact same night, except now it's dim, and you have a dysfunctional puppet. And you got to put on the... Yes. Once you get down the rhythm, it's incredibly easy, though. Originally, I actually did fail this night due to power exhaustion at 5 a.m. because those flashlights drain a little bit more power than I'd initially thought. They drain a lot, in fact, so you gotta practically double-click those things in less than 0.2 seconds, or else you're gonna lose more power than you can keep up with. But once you actually figure out that you need to be fast about it, it's not really a worry. But that's it. I have a feeling this video might end up being shorter than the last one, just because, well, this game just has nothing to say about it. It's just so boring. It's just a nothing game, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic. That's it. Let's just go to the end. 6 a.m. screen, here it is. There's nothing to be said about it. Give you the second star, you click it, and guess what happens? We're greeted yet again to another, kind of main-style FNAF menu, which once again calls into question, why couldn't you have just, been consistent with it? You could have made the original menu this style, which would actually look better, instead of making it centered for some reason. Or at least you could have, made these also centered so it remained consistent like the original game did, but it's neither here nor there. Anyways, this one is once again quite different. Uses a different font, once again, for the continue button. If you look at the bottom left there, it says Developer Massey in this ugly purple font with a white outline. I don't know why it says that, and it's not even correct grammar. Actually, it would be Massey Developer, as his name is Massydevs. Instead, it's going to be Developer Massey. There's no colon mark. It's not Developer. The developer role is from Massey. It's just the words Developer space Massey. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't plan to linger on the main menu, but I will note that Fredbear is on the right side this time. It just seems to be a recolored render of Freddy, but nonetheless, it doesn't answer the question of why he's there. It doesn't have any significance whatsoever. He's just there. I mean, well, some form of Golden Freddy does appear in this night. Spoiler alert, but, it's not Fredbear, so I don't know why he would appear here. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Let's just click continue and get into it. We're greeted with another tip screen that, tells us about our two opponents, Golden Freddy and Springtrap, who have now entered the fray, and they're actually the only two in this night. And once you load... Sorry, someone in my eye. The entire office is now in a red glow. Whereas in the original game, the office went orange, Halloween style, in the last night. Unfortunately, he didn't keep up that trend because that one actually made a good change, the orange hue and the pumpkin there. The pumpkin was a nice aesthetic. I even mentioned that previously. But no, just make it all red. And that's not even the only change. Strangely enough, Toy Bonnie has also been changed. As you see here, when Toy Bonnie enters the office, he's now completely scented, which is kind of annoying because he covers up the power button as shown here.
Bro, I can't see the button because it's...
It can kind of get in the way sometimes and has literally no reason to be there except to make everything inconsistent, unless his intent was to make him cover the power button, which, why wouldn't you just do that at night too? It doesn't... God, man, sorry. Get back on track. The office has a red tint on it, and that's only visual change, just makes it hard on the eyes once again, especially after looking at the dark screen for so long. But anyways, let's talk about the mechanics. These animatronics, Golden Freddy and Springtrap, actually do have sound cues. Finally, some sound other than the buzzing of the fan. And strangely enough, they're the same sound cues that belong to the shadows in the first game. Wonder if that has any lore significance. It doesn't matter, anyways. I don't know why I'm wondering about the lore of this game, of all things, but, sometimes curiosity gets the better of me, I suppose. Anyways, as I was saying, they do make sound cues, and the mechanics are very, boring, just like everything else. They're basically just functioning puppets. Now the monitor on the right is finally accessible, and when you open it, you see the backstage camera from Five Nights at Freddy's 1, which is the other location. So it's a camera from a completely different location. That doesn't make any sense. Well, I mean, I suppose in the original game we had a sister location camera, which also didn't make any sense, but, you had the time to make the music box camera in the same location, and yet you couldn't bother to just make this like some other camera. It's not like it being the backstage has any significance, it just is the backstage to be the backstage. It makes it more inconsistent. Why wouldn't you just use a FNAF 2 room? Like bars and service, a party room? God's sake. Anyways, it has a play audio button, which is how you get rid of Springtrap, which is an exact copy of his mechanic from the first game, and then a shock button to get rid of Golden Freddy, just like the first game. But wait, there's already a shock button in the map. That's right. The original shocker from One Night at the Old Location is still there, and is photoshopped in for seemingly no reason, and it's the only thing that's actually decently photoshopped in. Why wouldn't you put that to use? Make us press that button. Why would you make it two buttons on the exact same monitor to get rid of two different characters? You already have that prop. Just make that a button. It's the most logical thing to do. God, Jesus. Sorry. Anyways, that's it. Strangely enough, the play audio does have a sound cue and makes a little sound effect when you press on it, but the problem is it doesn't actually play any audio. Even in the first game, he had the patience to do that, make a little child laugh that the Springtrap goes to, but not in this game. But strangely enough, the shocker, which also had a sound effect in the first game, is completely silent. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't make any sounds, nothing. You press it and he instantly goes away. Couldn't add a shock sound effect, couldn't even add the same button pressing sound effect. You just add it for the play audio, it just goes away. And that reminds me, these renders are also stolen straight from Scott. Seemingly, the Golden Freddy one is the exact same as used in the original game, except he couldn't even bother to make it animated this time. And then the Springtrap one, I think that's a Springtrap render from the original, but it also bears quite a resemblance to this dark Springtrap render that I've come quite acquainted with which I immediately recognized as seemingly the same one, but, well, the lighting makes it pretty difficult to tell, if you know what I'm saying. Other than these changes, that's it. I'm not kidding. I'd really love to tell you more detail, but that's it. The entire thing. The monitor still has the same bug, by the way, where, the screen appears before the animation finishes. That's about it. Everything's the same. The absolute laziness of this game cannot be overstated. If you thought the old game was monotonous and boring and uninspired, you clearly haven't seen anything yet. This is just unacceptable. This is just rotten garbage to be put at the bottom of the game jolt pit. No wonder he delisted this game. Jesus Christ. Good riddance. My goodness, it's just complete trash in every way. Graphics look terrible. The sound effects are terrible. The mechanics are terrible. Everything about it is terrible. It's not even coded well. The puppet doesn't even function. Thank God you already have enough stuff to care about in the third night anyways. I ran out of power twice while trying to beat this night until I actually figured out, the double tap strategy on the light and had to play very carefully, in which case I finished with around 2010 power, around that range. You do have enough power, but God, it's very annoying dying to 5 a.m. and having to replay this game over and over again. This game manages to be even worse than its predecessor, and by a lot. It is just unacceptable trash, frankly. I never want to play this game again. You cannot play this game. I will not link in the description. I refuse to allow you to play this hot garbage. So, anyways, that's it. You wait for 6 a.m. and you get this slightly more bombastic 6 a.m. screen with some rainbow stars and, cool effects, but still no sound effects, though. It's just the same thing, it goes on for a bit, and then you get this OST here, ending screen, which credits Massey, Olexi73, which was the same person who was in the comments in my YouTube video. I saw you, don't worry. And, of course, Massydevs, which I assume is the person who composed the soundtrack, but don't quote me on that. Anyways, that's the game. You get all 3 stars, and that's it. This game is a hot mess. This game is miserable. You should not play this game. End of story. Mr. Hippo out. Right? I did everything I wanted to do, I'm done. I'm done, okay? Can I go? I did everything. I don't want to sit down here anymore. Please, I'm begging.
No, you sit the fuck back down!
Okay, Jesus Christ. Oh, calm down. I'll do it. But there is still light at the end of the tunnel. Because you see, as you may have seen in my last video, there is a remake made by the same developer, currently in development. It's One Night at the Old Location remake, and it plans to vastly improve on everything that the original game failed on. So hopefully this developer will finally actually have a good legacy. I can confirm to you that this is going to be a very good game. It's going to be fantastic. He's putting a lot of effort into it, being made on the Unity engine, and you should be very excited for it. I think it's going to be an actually good game, and, you won't have to worry about it being this kind of garbage, So, anyways, I recommend you check it out. I'll link it in the description. You should definitely follow it, and keep track of all the updates and play it when it's out. But other than that, this is where I'm signing off. It's been an honor covering the Onatol series, but this one is complete garbage, unfortunately. But don't worry, Onatol R, when that game comes out, will be one to rule them all. We won't have to deal with this garbage Onatol content anymore, and the name might actually be associated with something greater. So, I'll see you all on that day. Until then, this has been Mr. Hippo Criticizes. Okay, am I done now? Did I do it? Hello? Hey, Massey, talk to me here. Don't leave. I know you're out there. I can hear you. Oh, let me out. I did it. I did what you wanted me to do. Okay? I'm done. Are you listening to me?
And so our hero had
Oh?
finally exposed this developer
Hey, who
to
are
the
you?
world. With his mission
Hey, who's
accomplished,
that
he
I can
retreated
hear
back
you,
into the
you know.
shadows until he's needed again. When will that be?
You know, it's
I
rude
can't
to
tell you
ignore
anything quite
people
yet,
like that.
but just
I'm
know
talking to
that
you.
for now, he did what he was out to do, and he's
No,
satisfied.
I'm not done.
Thank you all for
No, this
enjoying
isn't
Mr.
the
Hippo
end.
Criticizes,
I
but
have
this
more
program will
videos to
now
make.
take a break for the foreseeable future.
Wait, my
Take care,
favorite-
everyone, and this
No,
was
you listen
Fred
to me
Michael
right
Hamby
now.
from
I'm gonna find your house. I'm gonna get out
MNOH.
of here.
I hope you had fun and enjoyed this news. Take care! Is that it? Can I go now?
Yeah, get the fuck out.
Oh, okay. I hate this stupid job.